Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mic'd Up Sports. Over the summer, we have been privileged to go through the time capsule with a lot of the projects that we have taken up over the last few weeks, and we'll be going on another journey through time with Catrice Williams, who holds a rare distinction, a Minneapolis North graduate and Arkansas State graduate, but she was one of the few athletes who was part of a three-peat at Minneapolis North. They won three straight state championships from 2003 through 2005 in Class AAA. Catrice, thanks for coming on. And when you look back on that, I know you talked about how some folks might not remember that era. When Minneapolis North comes to mind, a lot of folks think of Tamara Moore and Mauri Horton, the two Miss Basketball winners. But when you look back on what you've accomplished, how would you say your story has helped shape inner city basketball?
Well, it is. Well, first of all, thanks, Mike. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Honestly, like Tamara and Mauri, their legacy is wildly impactful, and super important when you think about inner city basketball, especially on the women's side of things. They were very inspirational and quite instrumental in the success that we had at the program in subsequent years. But when I think about the impact that my era, or the era that I belong to, had on girls basketball, I would say we were the torch carriers. You know, they lit a spark, and they handed us the torch, and I think that we took that responsibility very seriously, and we made it a point to carry the torch, not only on the court but off the court. Most of us are pretty successful in our own rights in the things that we've done after the game, and then we also, like in our era, most of us went on to create or honestly drive that Division I athlete, what do I want to call it, the tradition on.
And I should have started in this direction, but I think you gave a poignant answer. For those who haven't heard from you in a while, because it's been a few years since you played ball, I'm guessing, what do you do now, and how would you say basketball has shaped everything that you've done since your playing days?
Well, goodness, I wear lots of hats. I currently work in housing nonprofit, and I'm also a licensed real estate agent. The game has given me so many tools that have transferred into my success in any area that I've worked in. I work now as an advocate for affordable homeownership. I work largely with a few nonprofits around the 11 county metro to support diminishing the homeownership gap, because here in Minnesota we have a very large homeownership and wealth disparity, which trickles down into a lot of the other racial disparities that we have here. I would say that the game gave me tenacity. It gave me an air of coachability, made my skin thick, and it also taught me how to win graciously. My wins, I celebrate them, I share them with my counterparts. It's made me a great collaborator, a lifelong learner, all things that, in order to be successful in the game, you have to have, but make you invaluable in any space that you're in outside of the game.
Well, I'll start at the beginning, Catrice, now that we've had the prologue, or the introduction, so to speak. Do you remember the first moment or memory that got you in the sport of basketball? What got you hooked, excited about it?
Let's see. When I was 10, long time ago, I got my first experience in organized basketball. On a park board team at Botany Park in Northeast Minneapolis, and our head coach was Clifford Brown, who at the time, and this was 98. So at the time, he was the assistant on the men's basketball team at North. So he was coaching Khalid, he was coaching, Jason Spellman and all those guys. And I just had a growth spurt. So I was tall now. And, my mom had his son in daycare, had his children in daycare. And he said she should play. And I'd never touched a basketball. I don't have a family of athletes. Most of the people in my family are not tall, but, he introduced me to the game. And after that season, he took me to a basketball game. And this basketball game was at Williams Arena, and I think it was at Williams Arena. It was on the U of M campus. However, I remember seeing girls playing hard, jumping high, that looked like me, and they won. This particular game was the 1998 Girls State Basketball Championship. I didn't know what it was then, but I knew that they were excellent, and I knew that I wanted to do something like that. And at the time, I was, growing at a very rapid rate, hadn't grown into my body, so I was this gangly 10-year-old who could barely walk and chew bubble gum. However, I knew that whatever they did was great. Whatever they did was great. And I want to say it actually was a 97 championship. Yeah, it had to be the 97 championship.
Was it North Owatonna? Or was it another?
I think it was North Chaska.
That was 98.
Okay, so that was 98.
98. That was so
was
you
98.
got so you as a 10-year-old you got to see Tamara Moore and Mauri Horton win that first title for girls basketball at the school.
That was the first one, and I thought it was like so amazing because they looked like me. They looked like me. Their coach looked like me, and their coach was a girl. And so I was like, and my introduction to basketball, both my coaches were men. So I'd always thought that sports and athletics were just like a boy thing. And seeing that made me say like, oh, I want to learn more about this. Fast forward 6 or 7 months, my mom at the time had a daycare, and another one of her parents was an AAU coach. And at this time, it was a parent from the daycare down the street who happened to just see me jumping rope one day. And she told my mom, I want her to come play on my team. I was in, I think the 6th grade, but this coach was Tara Starks, who is now the head basketball coach at Hopkins. But I was 11. And Tara came and picked me up one Saturday morning, and I had never worked that hard in my life, ever. But I wanted more. And so I came back the next day. And not long after that, we must have been at the gym one day. We played at the Glenwood-Lindale Community Center, which is no longer in existence. It was near North Minneapolis, and that's where I met Tyree Bronson and Maya Johnson, Larea Starr, and a host of other girls who I ended up growing up playing with. However, we would sometimes just kind of be hanging out or at a tournament, and that's when I met some of those girls I don't know if that was it. One day we took just a trip. We took a trip and we were headed to, this was in 99. I remember, this was in 99. We took a trip to the gym because we were gonna go congratulate and send some girls off to the state tournament. Now, I'm 11, I don't really think much about it, but we walk into the gym and it's the same team of girls that I watched win that championship just a year prior. And I just remember being so mesmerized. And that day, I decided, I don't care what happens, I'm going to North High, and I'm gonna win a state championship at North High. Most of us ended up transitioning from Franklin Middle School on the north side to play at North High. And I did start playing at North High in the 8th grade. But we all pretty much followed Tara over there. So I think that those moments, like seeing that 98 championship, learning about the camaraderie and friendships that were to be gained, I love the social aspect of it. Honestly, that was what made me fall in love with it first. And I love the feeling of accomplishment after you like almost kill yourself in the gym. And those were the things that kind of kept me hooked. And you know, when you're a girl and you see strong, powerful women doing great things, you know, we saw that. I admired Tara so much because she was so tough. She was tough. She walked tall. She's not a very tall woman, but she walks tall. She expects the best of you. And she was never the type of coach who like pandered you because you were a girl. She expected you to learn things. She expected you to do things the right way. She expected you to work hard and hone your craft. And we were like 11. But she expected the best out of us. And not only was she tough on us, but she was so nurturing. You know, I'm almost 40 today, and I talked to you about like times where, you know, a time that Tara just picked me up from my house and was like, hey, you're gonna be great. I fast forward 20 some years, and I called Tara a few weeks ago when I said, you know, my daughters wanna play, and I don't know where to start. We had an hour-long conversation, and she gave me direction. 15 years ago, I had some health issues and I was scared. I called Tara and we talked through it. And so like having women like that were strong and nurturing and who immediately became a part of like the village that raised me also just kind of made me double down on like, you know, wanting to be a part of like this particular social world, this particular culture.
As I reflected everything you said, Catrice, there are actually a few questions that came to my mind. Actually, one of them is a common theme that I bring up with guests who have your build, your height, and I do that because there might be younger women out there, including your daughters, who are watching this. They're behind us, so you can't see them, but you know they might have these questions too, depending on how they grow into their bodies, or others as well. So, what was that like being one of the taller figures? You mentioned you shot up, and it wasn't necessarily a thing in your family. How did you grow into that identity? Because you and I were in the same graduating class. We went to different schools, but people, I think, looked at taller women maybe a little more awkwardly than they do now. I mean, women's basketball is more common. Or maybe not.
Yeah, no.
Maybe not. It was just one of those like, oh, what was it like for you, though, being 6'2", well, not at 10 years old, I'm guessing, but being one of the taller figures in your class?
Yeah, if it wasn't for basketball, it would probably have been torment. It, like, being different, having a different body style, whether it's being like obese or, you know, strangely tall at the time, because like it's a lot more common for girls to be 6'1", 6'2" today, but there was a challenge. It was a challenge. You know, shopping was a challenge. Learning to shop as a feminine tall woman was a challenge.
Finding clothes and shoes that fit, I hear, is a common refrain. Sounds like that was your that was your adventure.
Yeah, that was my adventure. And I honestly, because when I started to get tall, like I found the game, or the game found me. I spent so much time immersed in a culture where being tall was an asset. It wasn't something that I ever didn't love, you know. I knew that when I went home I was different. I have two younger sisters. They're 5'5" and 5'2" today. My mom's tall for a woman. She's like 5'7", but that's not tall to me. And my dad's like 5'11". So I'm literally the tallest person in my house. But again, growing up in a culture or a social world, which is, you know, being immersed in the world of sports where my height has always been an asset, it it made me feel unique. It made me feel like I was a contributor. It gave me a sense of accomplishment. And I've always been an admirer of like high fashion. And I have these really long legs. So like it's always been something that people have admired about me. They do it in a very strange way, but it was I would have to say it was a great experience. You know, kids are mean, but and they always point out, you know, the things about you that are different. I remember the days of wearing pants that weren't long enough because my mom didn't know where to shop. And you know, so you go through those, you know, you go through those things, but you know, those aren't the things that stand out to me from my like upbringing. I just remember like my height being a thing, it being like a positive thing, thanks to coaches, thanks to, you know, just the atmosphere that I grew up in. And luckily, like the Minnesota basketball community is very unique in a way that our elite basketball community, it's like a family, whether you're a man or a woman. So being surrounded by like a bunch of people who are as tall as you, even if they are men, and this is your family. This is your chosen family. This is your unique family. I met Clyde Turner when I was, I want to say 11 or when I was 12 or 13. I think, yeah, when I was 12. And, you know, being exposed to his camps and, you know, meeting Lawrence McKenzie and Terry Pettis and, you know, I grew up with Cameron and Crystal. But being surrounded by people who are the same height as you and taller, I never felt odd or like I stuck out because I was always around a bunch of tall people.
Larea Starr was one of your teammates.
And
Tisa was a little older, but you probably...
Tisa's still one of my really good friends. The great thing about being a lady polar is that you're always a lady polar. And one of the amazing things about the program, especially during the time that I was in the program, it wasn't long after their run. And they would always come back. Whenever they were home, they were in the gym with us. So we forged bonds with them, even though we were quite a bit younger. You know, when 1 year in AAU, I think eighth grade, when I was 13, I actually, the coach for my AAU team was Tamara Moore's brother. And Tamara would come back in the summer and work in the gym with us. She would drive us to tournaments in Duluth, and we would play like road trip games, and we really just were a family. Most of us played in the same AAU programs, just at different ages, and they would always come back and support us. So it was a family.
Something else came to mind too because of all the connections you have with your mom working in daycare. When you mentioned Tara Starks being one of her clients, I'm thinking to myself, that's probably when TT was little.
Was
so you probably figured out or got to see her talents before anyone else.
You know,
but it's how crazy how small this world is, because like it was her daycare connections that got you all into the sport of basketball. And when you said Tara would drop her kid, I'm like, wait a minute. I think I know who that is.
Yeah, no, I saw TT learn to walk, and
she did a lot more than that.
Yeah, she did. And just this summer, my girls attended the Hopkins girls basketball camp, and TT coached. And it's just amazing to see TT as a whole grown woman, just such an accomplished player, an amazing coach, and like remembering TT when she was a baby. Makes me feel a little old, but like I beam with pride because again, she is like a part of that legacy that, you know, that fabric of legacy that we are all woven into.
So what was it like to get instruction when you look back on it? You mentioned Tara Starks, and what you described sounds like what she's been doing her entire coaching career. I know she has a lot of respect with the Hopkins program, helped keep that, I don't want to say keep it together, but she, as I understand it, did some behind-the-scenes stuff that helped cultivate Hopkins into what it was, and then took over, won a state championship. But I don't think too many can say they were coached by both Tara Starks and Faith Johnson Patterson. Between them,
quite a bit of us. There are quite a bit of us.
Well, I can't say that.
Okay.
Well, for one, I can't play women's basketball. It would co-ed might be my best shot. But to get instruction from the two of them, one's the Hall of Famer, and Tara, again, well ingrained with the community.
And on her way.
So I think between them, they've got 9 state championships and how many more appearances in the finals. What do you look back on, reflecting on the time that you had them as coaches, and how did they shape you as a basketball athlete and as a citizen?
Oof. My mom would tell you, like, they were like her arch nemesis as a parent, because honestly, like, they were like voice number one. You know, as an adolescent, like, you make up your mind that outside of the adults outside of your family are who you listen to. And luckily, I had like these 2 really great examples of just excellence, who expected nothing less from me and my friends, and held us to a very high standard, believed that we could be every single thing that we wanted to be, but held us accountable to our goals. Never pushed us to be something that we didn't want to be, but when we made the decision that we were going to be the best, they rolled that out with us. They held us, they held our feet to the fire, because you said that you wanted this. They taught us about big picture thinking. They taught us not to be afraid of hard work. They worked us to vomit some days, but we loved every minute of it. There were days where we had practices so long that I know that they would break all the NCAA rules, but we didn't want to leave. We didn't want to leave the gym. And when we left the gym, we went to Broadway Pizza on West River Road with each other. So I would say, like, being coached by them, with them having a hand in my rearing, because they did more than coach us. They did more than coach us. They helped shape us, and they modeled for us, they modeled excellence for us. They modeled just being a good citizen. You look at Coach Johnson, she's super active in her church. She is, she's been a powerhouse in the real estate mortgage game in her own right for a long time. Coach P, who's her husband and is her assistant, he is an accomplished engineer. So we were surrounded by excellence, and we were surrounded by people who expected excellence of us, who always required that we carried ourselves in a way that would make our families and our communities proud. As a, Black revolutionary, I don't even subscribe to respectability politics. However, it wasn't more about like how, other people viewed us or what other people had to say about us. It was about a feeling of pride and understanding who we reflect when people see us. And that's something that was an invaluable lesson that I carried into adulthood. You play the best because, when you hear people mention your name, and it's been almost 20 years since I put a ball down and you called me because of because you saw the way that I showed up on the floor, and that's what you want people to remember. We had conversations, like we used to have like conversations before we even got dressed. We would have chalk talk, what we call chalk talk, every day. And we'd have conversations around like, how to navigate the world, in a basketball using basketball as a guide, and those lessons, and they were boring to us back then, and we were tired, and we just want to play. We just want to get to the gym. Where are the balls? But these are lessons as Black women that we needed to carry in the world in order to be successful. We worked hard, but we loved that hard work, and we were gym rats. We were gym rats, and they allowed us, like, we had lives outside of ball, kinda, because we was hanging with we hung with other ballers when we were outside the gym, but it was always be great.
trying to keep myself together because I don't have the experience as a player. I wasn't that athletic enough. But when you say there's a life outside of ball, I'm thinking about it and going, my case, I'm not sure.
I mean, like, when
I know what
like,
you, and I'm
when
teasing.
you
Yeah,
leave the gym.
Yeah, I'm teasing.
But honestly, there really isn't. 20 years later.
I've said, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm like, basketball without it, okay, I don't have the state titles that you do, or Crystal, or Maya, or all the other North alum that you got to mix it up with. But it's without that sport, that gave me a family that I never had growing up. I didn't always have the best time making friends, and it's a long story, and this is your spotlight, your stage, so I'll save it for another time. But yeah, without this sport, wouldn't have this conversation with you or Maya Johnson or all these other people that I'm grateful for it, and I get a taste of it. But when you said we have life outside of basketball, it's like, yeah, we might, but it's a small community. Us basketball people kind of stick together.
This is true. Like, I mean, a life outside of basketball means like the balls aren't involved. Like, the balls are put away in the cage, but honestly, you're still rolling with your family. And they're your chosen family. So, those bonds are important, and they often mean a lot. They're a lot deeper because, the family that you're born into, you gotta hang with them. Like my sisters are my best friends. However, Maya's my sister. Jackie Mylan's my sister. Tisa's my sister. Bree is my little sister.
Tisa's a sister I never had growing up. She looks out for everybody.
Yeah, Tisa's like the mom sister. Like, I remember, being in my dorm room at college crying because like things were so hard emotionally. Being like a newly 18-year-old kid, 1,000 miles away from home, trying to apply all the things that you learn were going to make you successful at the next level and trying to put them into action and them just not working. And I remember us all, this is 2005, 2006. I remember us all being just on the phone. Daria, Davita, Daria was at Wichita State. Maya just transferred to Michigan State. Tyree was at Creighton. We were all on the phone. Lorraine was at Tennessee State. We're all on the phone. Everybody's got their three-way activated.
That's right. This is before Zoom.
This is way before Zoom. This is before FaceTime. This is before the iPhone. Right.
No smartphones yet. Facebook was college only.
Yeah, Facebook was college only. And I remember I was all being on the phone just griping this is the worst. I just wish it would be different. And, having that support system, like that real family. And again, like I told you, I didn't come from a family of athletes. So like having people who really understood your struggle, understood your plight. I remember playing against Davita and Daria my freshman year and just being so overjoyed to just see a familiar face or something that was a reminder of home that you're not in this struggle by yourself. You have sisters all across the country who are in the trenches with you. Being a lady polar gave me that. And
well, on that subject of the lady polars, you were dead set on going to North, seeing Tamara Moore and Mauri Horton go back to back. By that point, you mentioned before, boys basketball was huge and always had been. Now the girls finally got their claim to fame. The 98 team got the Wheaties box. Again, the most recognized team, but I've said this even with my other project, talking to all the Miss Basketball winners. The reason I'm reaching out to all of them is you all wrote a chapter in this story, and it doesn't matter how many titles you won. Without you, we can't move forward. And that includes the people that didn't win Miss Basketball, too. But what do you remember going to North and being you went to the finals every year, 02 through 05, and then won 3 in a row. The one year you didn't win, you got second. So 3 golds and a silver is a pretty good showing. But what do you remember from your time at North? As I spoke with Maya Johnson earlier today, and I think others are aware, there's some obstacles or circumstances that may be unique to Minneapolis North that other schools don't deal with. But there was also that sense of family that you spoke of a moment ago, where it didn't matter what was happening on the outside. All of you had a mission, and I look back on all of the wonderful athletes and people that have come out of there. What do you remember going to North and getting to experience that community firsthand after seeing it as an impressionable 10, 11-year-old?
I think that like just being immersed in the culture gave me, like I said, a sense of tenacity that I probably wouldn't have gotten if I had gone to Breck, like, which was the other option after middle school. There were lessons in adversity that came with every season, every single season, that like I think that may have been unique to our program, but may not have been. But I think just the way that our coaching staff was structured and the very important pieces that, completed the puzzle of our leadership, they taught us lessons that, that we needed to know, that were culturally relevant, that were, that honestly spoke to the unique experiences that we would have as we navigated the world as adults. They taught us about big picture thinking. And like what 14, 15-year-old is like thinking about, like, okay, yeah, I had this setback. Typically, like I have children of my own now, and like the smallest thing set them off and the world is ending. And teenagers are just big little kids. But
I'm 37 years old and I still feel like a kid sometimes.
I do also. And like being taught to like approach problem solving in a way that, you look at setbacks as like, okay, we got through this thing. We got through this thing, like, let's not take our eyes off the prize. We had struggles. Every year we had a specific struggle. I remember my senior season, we lost for the first time in the conference in 9 years. And oh gosh, the tongue lashing we got, not from our coaches, but from the classes that came before us, like, oh my gosh, you guys are tarnishing our legacy. Like, understanding that, hey, this is a bump in the road. Learning to approach problems and adversity as like, a bump in the road. Things have been okay before. You have to apply, like the lessons that we learned from last season, the lessons that you learned over the summer, the lessons that life has been teaching you. Apply that to this here. And again, don't take your eyes off that prize. We were laser focused from the end of October through the third weekend in March, through the third Saturday in March. We were laser focused. And the focus was the championship. Whatever we had to do to get that championship, whatever work we had to put in, whether it was independently or collectively, whatever we had, whatever resources we had to ask for, whatever groceries we had to bag, whatever funds we had to raise, whatever we had to do, everybody was locked in. Not only the 15 players that hit the floor, but our coaching staff as well. And they were in the trenches with us. And it wasn't a situation where they expected, things of us that they weren't willing to give us, because they gave us their time. They gave us their resources. I'm sure there were things that they took care of financially out of their own pockets, out of their own budgets for their families, to make sure that we had the things that we needed. Because we didn't always have the community support. We didn't. But their support was unwavering.
Trying to think who you might have lost to that senior year in conference, because Taylor Hill, Washburn. Okay, well,
we lost to Washburn once, and we lost to South.
Okay,
it was Taylor Hill's 7th grade season, and yep.
Seventh grade? I knew she played in 8th, but well, I guess it doesn't sting as much now when you see what Taylor Hill did.
Still stings. Still stings. It was a 12-year-old.
Well, here's the thing. I say this a lot, whether you're a state champion or not. It's not the record. I know everyone would love to have the undefeated season. North got to do that, I think, once.
Yep, that's 29-0.
In 98, and Hopkins did it 1 year. St. Paul Central did it 1 year. But having covered the WNBA for 10 years and all 4 Lynx championships, people don't remember the records. They just remember how the ending went. Mm-hmm. And for 3 years, you were able to get that state title. What was different? What was the same in those 3 years? Because in high school, you had to do it with a different cast. In 2003, you had Larea Starr, who was quite the low post player from what I was able to see. 2004, well, and Maya and Tyree were part of that 03 team too, but in 2004, it was their turn. They were the dynamic duo, so to speak. 2005, I know you were part of that team. The others are a little fuzzy. That's one reason I was glad you agreed to do this, because it kind of fills in some of these gaps. Like, yeah, this 3P team had some ballers too. So how did you adapt all 3 years to get you in that position to win 3 straight?
You know, I think that having the success in the past, really gave us a little bit of an edge. It taught us like what it takes to win. The entire starting 5, with the exception of one player, the entire starting 5 of that 3P team played on that. Was on the team in that 03 season. So it was, what do I want to say? You know how like when a dog bites a human, you got to put it down because it has the taste of human flesh. But I guess that's a terrible analogy, but like you get a taste of it.
That's a new one. I've never heard of that before.
You get a taste of it. And honestly, you're willing to do whatever it takes. I think that in those two prior seasons, we had like some really prominent superstars that were, you know, really big names in basketball from the time that they put on a Lady Polar jersey. And coming after that, you know, we were a team that held our own, and we had skill in our own right. But I think that sometimes you get overshadowed because you have such big names that you're playing with. I can't say that we lacked any talent. I can't say that. I can't say that either of those teams that came before us were like more talented. I think that, you know, like iron sharpens iron, and we spent, you know, 4 or 5 years sharpening each other. So those were who we had in-house. That was the talent that we had to sharpen ourselves against. And so when it came to playing people outside of that, because we had the best of the best in-house, when it came to coming up against opponents that weren't them, it was easy money because that's who we cut our teeth with. Let's see, 5 of the 6 seniors. No, wait. Yeah, no. 3 of the 5 seniors that graduated my senior year played Division I basketball. Went on to play at the Division I level on full athletic scholarships. One of whom wasn't even in our starting 5. So I think that speaks to the level of skill that like our team possessed, that people just kind of didn't know about because, you know, we're playing with superstars. You know, like you think about the Bulls teams in the 90s and you hear about the big 3, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, but nobody ever hears about, like nobody ever talks about, like,
Kukoc, Steve Kerr, who hit the game winner in 97 in Game 6.
Who else?
The first 3P, I think John Paxson hit the buzzer, not buzzer beater, but the go-ahead 3 in 93 to win it.
No, you don't think about those. You don't think about those, like that talent that is there that, you know, may not necessarily get like all of the recognition, or it may not be the the name that rings a bell when you think about that program. Like when you think about, and I'm telling you, when you think about Minnesota or Minneapolis basketball, like no matter where you go, you're gonna hear two names. You're gonna hear KG and you're gonna hear Khalid El-Amin. Like, I remember going to college in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and when people heard that I was from Minneapolis, Minnesota, they were like, do you know Khalid El-Amin? Not that Khalid is 7 years older than I am. And, but, it's like, yeah, we went to the same high school. And, like, not understanding that there's so much talent and that, that these names attract, like, honestly, like, who didn't want to play with Maya Johnson? Who didn't want to play with Tyree Bronson? Who didn't want to play with, who didn't want to play with us until
I'd be one of them. I think you would have taken me to school. I'm kidding. Yeah. I'm probably the only one that wouldn't want to play with you because North, they don't fool around.
Honestly, there were some people who didn't want to play with us for that very reason. But, honestly, that mindset of like, okay, they're the best and I want to be a part of this. I want to come over here and be sharpened too, because I have something that will sharpen them. Like that was what everybody came with. Like everybody who came to the program and like cut it, like everybody could stay. Like that was the mentality that they came with. Like, oh, I'm gonna play with the best, I'm gonna make them better, and I'm gonna get better. And it didn't matter what that took. Like there were Saturdays where, we'd have Saturday practice and we would like be begging Tara to stay at the gym with us because we wanted to put up a few more shots. Or, there's some things that we wanted to work on. We were those 500 shots a day in the summer kids, in the North gym with no air conditioning, begging Coach Johnson and Coach P to come let the hoops down. Much to the chagrin of Mr. Johnson or Mr. Booster, whoever was the AD at the time, we didn't want to leave the gym. And I think that was something that set all of us apart, especially like the team that I ended my Lady Polar career with. Like, we were a real live family. Like Marika Carlisle, Daria Frazier, Davita Moore, Charmaine Cross, Tasha Byers. Like those, we lived and breathed the game, because we loved it and it was good to us. Like winning a couple state championships, that'll recharge your battery.
If winning 2 will recharge it, what I dread to think, or I shouldn't say that, I wonder what 3 did. You probably set it on overload. You've probably been running on that charge ever since.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I think that being a champion at a level that on a level that like makes people recognize it, being a champion on a level that makes history in any right, at any level, can carry you. Like, you always reach back and think like, okay, everybody likes recognition. It's like one of the things that is on the hierarchy of needs. We love being recognized. We love being accepted. And like having that, especially as a Black girl, you have something to reach back to like drive you when things get tough. Like, remember when you overcame all of this adversity to win, and how good that made you feel, how proud the people who you respect were of you, and the prizes that came along with that, how that made your life easier, what that gave you access to. That's always something that you reach back, like for me, that's always something that I reach back to and think of like when things are hard. I remember studying for my real estate license, and hearing, like other Black agents say, oh, I took the test like 7 or 8 times. And I'm like, oh, that ain't gonna be me. I remember studying for my HUD exam. So I'm also a HUD certified housing advisor, housing counselor. And I remember like hearing people say, like, I took that test 7 times. I took that test 8 times before I passed. Oh, that ain't gonna be me. That's not gonna be me. And like carrying that, like that drive, that like that level of expectation of yourself, that battery from those 3 state championships, something that had never been done, something that like, honestly, I probably couldn't live down if I didn't accomplish it. Like absolutely charges my battery these days. It's almost, 19 years later.
I feel like there's a few more things. You and I have been having quite the conversation. You definitely have no trouble with telling stories, and I appreciate that, Catrice. But I'm curious, we were talking a little bit about the iron sharpening iron, getting to face probably a swath of opponents in high school and college. Who would you say was the toughest player you ever had to go against?
Like ever?
You can answer it however you see fit.
Honestly, the toughest players that I ever had to go against wore the same jersey as me. There were some opponents, Taylor Hill being one, that like, that honestly, when you go into this game and you're like, she's gonna get her money. I remember playing against Duke my freshman year of college, Monique Curry. She was tough. Monique was tough. Monique's probably like the most skilled player I've ever played against. Candace Parker on the AAU circuit, she was crazy. She was huge, and she could move, and she could jump, and it was crazy. So those are probably the two most difficult that didn't wear the same jersey as I did. Yeah, I have to say those two.
And I feel like we would need an entirely different conversation to talk about your college career. I know you didn't light up the stat sheet from what I could research at Arkansas State, but you still went D1.
That's a whole nother set of adversity.
Well, when you look back on that, if you don't mind, just what do you make of your time as a Division I athlete? Because I've said this, even if you're not the stat stuffer or the player that is the headliner, not everyone's going to be a Candace Parker or a Monique Curry or locally Caitlin Clark or more recently Paige. It's great if you can achieve that level, and several athletes from Minnesota have. But for you, what do you look back on from your time at Arkansas State and being part of that legacy? Not every North kid became a superstar athlete, but you're one of the 20 plus, I think, that Faith Johnson Patterson coached who went Division I. That's a pretty good list to be on.
Yeah, it is. And when I got to college, there was a much different level of like adversity. I didn't enjoy my Division I basketball experience. It wasn't because I couldn't cut it physically. It wasn't because I didn't work hard enough. There was just another level of, there was a different approach to coaching in the particular program that I chose that wasn't a good fit for me. It wasn't a good fit. And I knew before I went to college that that college was going to be the end of the road for my basketball career. That's what I told myself, because I wanted to explore some other things. And I also understood that basketball could be a tool. And it is a tool. And I've got quite a few other tools in my toolbox. And I'm really grateful for the leadership that I had as an adolescent in in my upbringing that I understood that. Now, when I decided to put basketball down because I was just unhappy, and I'd never been so unhappy, it was really tough finding my identity as a student who wasn't a student athlete, because I'd never been one, like as long as it like really mattered. I became a student athlete in elementary school, and it took a lot to get used to. But you know, I enjoyed, again, the social aspect. I'm still really good friends with most of my college teammates. We actually had a mini reunion this past fall, but it was different. It was different. While mental toughness was something that we practiced and a skill that we honed and that we really focused on in my time as a Lady Polar, I don't know that I had the emotional toughness to withstand what I endured when I got to Arkansas State, because I was still a kid, and I was a kid, and I didn't necessarily know how to advocate for myself in the way that I probably needed to. And I put down the thing that I love the most and I love the longest. And I've never said this to anyone else, but that is one of my biggest regrets, is just not having the courage to leave Arkansas State and play somewhere else. Because it wasn't that I couldn't cut it physically. You know, I could cut it physically. You know, because when I got to college, I wasn't that big anymore. You know, I'm actually 6'1", and to like be a 6'1" post player at the Division I level, even back then, wasn't that big. You know, like going up against girls who were like 6'5". I even played against a girl who was like 6'9". Imagine that. Like, so like I moved to the wing, and I felt like I was in a situation where like whatever I did wasn't good enough. And honestly, those 3 state championships, they were a chip that my coaching, I feel like some of my coaching staff at Arkansas State had on their shoulder. Arkansas State, while they had a stellar academic record, it was far enough away from home, somewhere warm, where I didn't have to fight Minnesota winters, and it made it very attractive. It was surrounded by HBCUs and a culture of Black excellence that I really admired. However, they were a program who got interest in me a lot later than the other Division I offers that I got. And they didn't know me. So when I got there, they thought that I was this prima donna that had just kind of walked into, you know, that was always the superstar, because they'd only watched my senior season, that they thought I was always the superstar. I came off these 3 state championships, and like my coaching staff would make comments like, "We're gonna break you. I'm gonna break you like a horse." And like not knowing how to like navigate that type of coaching strategy, where it was tough for me. And I remember being on one of those circle calls and just like crying about like how like it didn't matter what I did, it was like still the same. I couldn't be better. First, I'm too small, so I need to gain weight. And like doing what you've been taught to do, you know, continuing to work hard, make sure your times are better, make sure you're lifting more, make sure you're getting faster, make sure you're spending your time in the gym when you're not required to be in the gym, all while managing a class schedule. that was pretty rigorous because when I went to college, I was a marketing. When I started college, I was a marketing major. I made the transition to social science a lot later, but it was tough. It was tough, and like I said, one of my biggest regrets is not, because I fell in love with a lot of aspects of Arkansas State, and I forged my first adult relationships. So it was really hard to leave, and I didn't leave. I put down the thing. I left the arena that was making me the most unhappy at the time, and that was rough. And I remember getting a call from Coach Johnson after I decided to not play anymore. And she said, well, I've got a couple schools calling me about you. And I said, I just don't want to do it. I was so heartbroken in that situation that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And that turned into like a long era of like trying to find myself without basketball, which was another level, another type of adversity that I'd never experienced. But I can tell you that the lessons that I took away from, the tutelage of Coach Starks and Coach Johnson, Coach P, like those carried me through.
If you don't mind, maybe just give us a brief synopsis of that search. That's something I know you and I talked about. You're looking to explore yourself through podcasting or maybe other avenues, but that's something a lot of athletes deal with when they're working their way through injury. But I think we sometimes forget there is a life after basketball, whether you end your career at the college level, professional level. It sounds like you grew in a lot of ways that you weren't anticipating, but it took some doing.
Absolutely. Like I speak about social worlds all the time. Like being an athlete is being a part of a social world, and like thinking of you, like when you are a student athlete, that's legit your identity. That is your identity. And imagine waking up tomorrow and not having a piece of yourself. Imagine having to navigate the world without, like a piece of your soul, or I don't know. Imagine having to wake up tomorrow and finding yourself in a world with no pants, where pants didn't exist for you, where you gave up pants, or like what's your favorite food, and you don't want to eat your favorite food every day, or where you gave up water or air. Something that honestly you needed to live, or you needed to feel like you. You gave up your eyebrows, or someone like chopped your nose off.
You have some really specific or eccentric examples here, Catrice.
Like things that are like a part of yourself. I don't know, like if I woke up tomorrow and I was 5'5", I don't know how I would navigate the world.
Or if your braids disappeared, or would you have a way of your necklace? What are all these other abstract?
No,
what have you done?
You think about things that are
I'm making too much light of this.
No, like legit. Think about like things that are a part of you that you don't even think about. You don't think about daily because you just wake up and it's a part of your existence. So I guess your nose is one thing that you don't think about your nose every day. You don't think about your nose every day.
My left index finger.
Yeah, your left index finger, your left thumb. Your left thumb. Imagine not having your left thumb. As a lefty, oh my God, I'd be up Schitt's Creek. Think about like waking up with something you don't ever think about because it's just there. It's just a part of you. You wake up tomorrow, you don't have that. And then like having to navigate the world and not be able to smell. Having to navigate the world and like without like one of your senses or something that is integral to your identity. And yeah, that shit's tough. And it takes a lot of getting used to. And I don't know that I gave up my athlete identity. It took me a long time though. It took me a long time to like watch basketball. it took me a long time to touch a basketball. It took me a long time to get back into like even being able to be around the game. Because like my exit was so heartbreaking. And it was a decision of mine. It wasn't because of injury. It wasn't because of, something physical that like separated me from the game. It just was the place at the time that like I was the most unhappy. And in my first real adult decision, like the boundary that I set was to eliminate that thing that was making me unhappy. And it made sense at the time. It did make sense at the time. But, like finding myself, finding who I was or who I could be, like without being a basketball player, and especially coming home after college, and that still being what people recognize you for, was hard. Today, not so much, it's something that I embrace. But, when you go through a bad breakup, you don't want anyone associating you with that ex. But, as you grow and you realize, that love taught you so many lessons. And that love is such a big part of the way that you approach life, the way that you approach the world, how you problem solve, how you show up, how you win, how you, is how you present yourself, like how it's such a big part of the person that you are. You learn to embrace like all of the things that came with, that relationship, because I was in that relationship for a long time. So there had to be like a whole lot more highs than there were lows. Even though the lows, like I told you, like when you're in a problem, it's the worst thing that ever happened to you. And after you're out of it, like hindsight is 20/20. You're like, oh, I could have approached that different, So I would say that to sum it up, I would say that it was a long journey. It was a long journey full of like trying to fit round pegs into square holes, but finding my rhythm in something that I was as passionate about as I was about the game, and I think that's service. I talk to people a lot about like service being a guiding theme in my life and affecting change, being something that I always want to do. I think being a part of that historic 3P team gave me a taste of like what being a part of a historic legacy is, and I want to do that again. So I guess that sums up my Catrice, how did you find yourself journey?
I feel like you and I could do a part 2 here. Perhaps we might, as I think your little ones are trying to get in.
They probably changed their mind.
Well, I'll leave you with this because I feel like you and I could cover so many different topics. That's why I said we might have to do a part 2 depending on scheduling.
Gladly.
But all right, well, let's make it happen. Seriously, though, it feels like I've gotten just a taste of it or the synopsis of it, but you got to the high, the highest, the peak, the pinnacle, winning 3 straight state championships, something that not even Tamara or Mauri Horton can claim. And then you went through that soul-searching process at Arkansas State, and now, I don't want to say you're going through it again, but now you get to experience, I guess, this cycle as a mother of 2 now, although your kids aren't, they're not old enough yet to get into the high school level,
right.
But it sounds like they might pursue a sports path.
It's so funny. They came out of the womb. They came out of the womb like interested in basketball, interested in sports in general. And I remember before becoming a mom, I said I want to become a mom before I'm an old lady, because I want to be able to give my girls the game, my kids the game, if they choose to want it. And I remember praying praying that my kids would love the game. And, I have come across some athletes who have had, similar experiences at the collegiate level that I had, and they're like, my kids will never play. I don't ever want my kids to experience like that level of heartbreak. And I just think that like the lessons that I learned at that time of my life, I now know how to better advocate for my kids. I was following the big Tennessee team exodus that happened, I want to say this past year, where the entire women's basketball team at Tennessee entered the transfer portal because they were all experiencing things that were very similar to like what I experienced in my Division I experience. And I remember watching, I think on some social media platform, one of the players from the team just kind of giving her like, okay, this is why we're all leaving. Here it is. This is why we're all leaving. And there were so many parallels like to what I experienced in my journey. And I said to myself, like, yo, these girls, these young women have to have some like stellar advocates, or they've got to have some people in their corner who have traveled this road. Because I remember being 18 on a road trip. I think we were at Purdue, and my parents came down. My parents drove down from Minneapolis to Bloomington to watch us play, and they came to the pregame meal, and my mom was like, "You're not eating." I'm like, I don't want them to say anything about like, I don't want them to say anything about me gaining weight or me overeating, and I've already got to do more work in the gym now because I'm not getting as much playing time, and they want me to stay in shape just in case I do. And I remember just breaking down to my mom saying like, I hate it here and I don't want to do this anymore. And my mom saying, well, what do you want me to do? I will talk to the coach. And I was like, hell no. I gotta live here, you don't. And being afraid of advocacy and being afraid to ask for help in that situation because I was so afraid that an already bad situation would get worse. As a mom, I am working really hard to not make that my children's experience. I want them to be accustomed to hard work. I want them to expect excellence from themselves. It was such an amazing feeling to like, and I work in a way now that I'm flexible enough to experience like their entire basketball journey with them. I chose a career that would make me flexible enough to not be able to not have to miss important things because I've got to be gone for work, or I gotta, there's something else I gotta do. And this summer, like I told you, they both attended the girls' basketball camp at Hopkins with Coach Starks, and thinking about how intrigued, afraid I was when I first encountered her style of coaching, and how my 8-year-old, I've got an 8-year-old, how she just wanted to be better. She wanted to get better. She was at home in the driveway, just working on her ball handling. At home in our cul-de-sac, she like brought out her cones, because I have cones at home. I know. Brought out the cones, and she was working on dribbling through the cones and working on her crossover, all on her own, because this is what Coach Starks taught her. And being able to like, and I don't play anymore, like even playing, after going through that experience, playing now is even sometimes a tough thing, but being able to like show her fundamentally the right way to do things, and for her to be so amazed that I know how to do these things is something that, again, recharges my battery. So as a mom, I think that is what that time and that era of my life gave me, because basketball was good to me. It was the first thing that I ever really loved, the first thing I was ever really passionate about. That was my decisions. The first thing I ever really chased. And we all need a carrot. we all need a carrot. We all need a purpose. And of all the lessons that I learned in my time as a basketball player, I think purpose is what I take away from, purpose and vision is what I take away from that. You know, the Bible says without a vision, the people perish. Basketball and success in that arena have given me a way. They gave me a purpose and a vision, you know, very young. So I know how to like carve that out in whatever arena I'm playing in at the time. You know, like in my real estate career, I can plan, I can market, I can connect myself with the right people because I know what having a vision and having a purpose look like. And like, it doesn't matter where you are, it like, they have the same components. So,
Well, I wasn't expecting to go in that direction because what I was going to ask you with the lead up to the last question and you know what you said, I think is quite profound in itself, something that I think will carry over. But with everything you've experienced in your career and as an athlete, all of it, what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
Girl, transfer. You know, I probably...
You could have made the WNBA. No, I'm kidding.
That I didn't want to do.
You could have made the NCAAs. No, but...
Yeah, that I didn't want to do. I knew I didn't want to play in the WNBA. I knew that I wanted...
The one thing you would have told yourself is transfer.
Girl, transfer. And I would tell myself two things. Girl, transfer. And it's not all for nothing. I think a large part of the struggle that I had walking away from basketball was like, yeah, well, that was all for nothing. You know, like you had this 10-year career, 15-year career, and you walked away from it with your head down. So all for nothing. And you know, it was at a time that I was really young still, and people still expected it from me. My partner, I joke with him a lot because he always talks about like, you know what, I wish I would have met you when you were playing. You wouldn't have quit. And he didn't play at the Division I level. And he's always asking me questions about like, oh, how was it? And what was this like? And what was that like? And it was just like, it sucked. But I largely regret like putting it down and not finishing it. I didn't get to like the finish line that I set. And that took a lot of forgiveness. That took a lot of self-forgiveness to get past that. So I probably would tell myself, one, it wasn't all for nothing. And two, girl, just transfer. Girl, it's just transfer.